I love how it's just like so delayed.
Yeah,
so it goes live, like you basically
as
have
I'm
to
talking about
stop
the layout.
talking.
Yeah, the layout things and stuff.
Like, okay, gosh. It's so funny to watch that.
Yeah.
Huh. All right.
All right, so we're live.
Well, hi everybody. That's our own little technical issues. Welcome to this week's podcast. We're gonna start the recording and get into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Experience Vanlife podcast. My name is Alex.
And I'm Frankie. And together we are Experience Vanlife podcast with Frankie and Alex.
That's right. This week we're going to be talking about the foundation of your build. So, where to start? Because it can seem like a totally overwhelming job. You just bought this beautiful new van. We talked about how to do that in the last episode.
Yep.
And so now you have this big empty space. And what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, what do you do? There's so many things that your mind is probably going through at this point. Like what type of layout you're going to do, or, if there's things that you need to fix underneath the hood, and many, many more. And we're going to get into all that stuff in this podcast.
Yes. But before we do that, a quick update from the road.
Yeah. Where are we right now?
Where are we? Good question.
We're in the middle of nowhere, it feels like.
Well,
It's an awesome place.
We're in Sudbury, Ontario, which is north of Toronto. It's a beautiful city. It's got 300 lakes and so much forest, and it's a huge rock formation, basically.
It's super beautiful, and our buddy Kyle told us that we're actually inside a crater right now, which is pretty cool to think about.
Very cool. So, and if you do come to Sudbury, you have to go to the Alibi Room.
Oh man, what a wonderful bar! What a wonderful bar. The people there are awesome. They have all different types of things you could do there. Like they have a live mic night, open mic night.
Yeah, they have music all the time. Their food is delicious.
The drinks were incredible.
So tasty.
Service top notch.
So the Alibi Room in downtown Sudbury, highly recommend it.
Go check it out for sure.
So we've just been enjoying some time with friends and time with family. And next up, we're going to be heading to Michigan for mountain number
24, I think.
24.
It might even be 25.
We
need to check that because I think Badawa was that 22.
I think it was either 22 or 23.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. I think so. We'll be at technically mountain 24, but 23 on our actual list of mountains.
Yeah, so that's in upstate Michigan. We'll be heading there later today to continue our journey. So it's been nice to kind of kick back and relax for a couple of days.
Back to America.
That's where we're going. The gas is a lot cheaper, so that's nice. But okay, so getting back to... Oh, and also, sorry.
I'm sick.
Frankie's got a little bit of a cold.
Might hear a couple coughs throughout the podcast. I apologize for that. Hopefully you guys could bear through it with me.
So, starting your build. The first place that you have to think about is how old is your vehicle? Because the older your vehicle, the more work that you're going to have to do.
Oh, yeah.
Our vehicle is a 2003 Dodge Sprinter. 2003 was a great year, but it was a very long time ago.
Well, and it also depends on if your van was garage kept or whatnot. Ours was definitely not, and had to be sitting out in a yard for the last 2 or 3 years, if not longer.
We had to kick out a whole colony of ants. From the back. So if you're buying a brand new Sprinter, you're not going to have to worry about things like rust or the engine, because hopefully your brand new Sprinter has a beautiful brand new engine. So where you have to start is going to depend on the quality or the age of the vehicle that you actually purchased. And the two main components of your build are the engine and then the back home layout area.
Yes. So, speaking of the back home layout area, there are several places that you could go to try to get like an idea of what type of layout you want. There's a bunch of different places. You just type it in online and you can figure out different type of layouts that other people do as well. We sort of went with like a high bed layout, but we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about that in the next podcast. But we also will give you guys updates on like what type of websites you could use to help make those layouts. But yeah, with all that being said, when you have this empty space, it's just a blank canvas, and you have a lot of opportunity. Also, what I would really look at first before the layout even is the engine. So before making your layout and building that and wasting time on that, you have to make sure that your engine is completely sound and all your components around it are good to go, because you don't want to build a whole home inside a place and then realize you can't even move it.
Mm-hmm. Because the engine, you're not just building a home, you're building a home inside of a vehicle that is completely reliant on the engine. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like if you were building a house, if your electricity and your furnace wasn't running, those would be the number one things that you would be taking care of.
Yeah, you want to get heat in your house before, it gets cold outside.
You worry about painting the walls
vice
blue.
Versa, yeah.
So the engine is definitely the first thing that you need to look at. When we got our car, we bought it from a mechanic, but we weren't necessarily sure of his caliber of workmanship.
Or even like what he did, because he didn't have like a logbook of what he did, or give us a logbook
like oil changes or things like that.
He told me he did an oil change. He told me he checked a few things, and actually at the very back of the book, in the maintenance book, had a couple things that when he bought it that he wanted to do, and they still weren't done.
Oh, awesome.
So it was like check side door, and something about the lights, and also front brakes, and which is something that I, even before buying the vehicle, noticed that one of the rotors were warped when we were driving it, and had to make sure that it was a warped rotor rather than something else that was more expensive and more in depth about the vehicle structure itself.
So the first thing you're going to want to do when you get your vehicle is take it to a mechanic that you trust.
Yeah, and just taking it to the mechanic doesn't mean that you're going to pay for it. Take it to a place where they could give you a free estimate on like all the what they would do to the truck.
Yeah, and the components, or they can check and see, is your transmission great, or does your transmission need to be replaced?
Yeah.
We took it to a mechanic who Frankie knew through his work.
Yeah, through the company I work for, we had a bunch of fleet vehicles, and that company also does a ton of other fleet vehicles, as well as diesel trucks and stuff, which is fairly hard to find a diesel mechanic, and also one that's reliable. So you have to have some type of understanding of what you're getting yourself into.
And you can ask around too. Like, we were just in Ontario, and we wanted to take the car to a mechanic to get a couple of things looked at, but we don't have a mechanic in Ontario. No. So we asked a couple of friends who we knew had diesel vehicles. Yep. Where do you go? Do you like who you see? Do you trust them? And so through that recommendation, we took it to a dealer, or like a mechanic, who turned out to be great.
Yeah.
If you're going to the dealer, hopefully your vehicle is still under warranty. If it's new enough to still be under warranty, then going to the dealer is great, because it's going to be paid for in the cost, because it's still under warranty.
Yeah.
But if you're not still under warranty, taking it to the dealer might be a very expensive way to get something very simple fixed.
Yeah, and like if a mechanic could purchase the part, they can more than likely replace the part. So you don't necessarily have to take it to the dealer, and the dealer is always going to be way more expensive than a private entity.
So basically what we did, we took it in, we had the guy, the mechanic, give it a look over, and he came back with a list. And he said, your engine is technically in great condition, but a lot of the parts inside of an engine are only rated.
I would say around, not inside. So for instance, your water pump, your starter, all these components are around. They're in the engine area, but they're not inside your engine.
Well, to me, anything under the hood is in the engine.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
So he gave us a whole list of things that he would recommend replacing, because they should be replaced between 60 and 80,000 miles.
Yeah.
The car had over 200,000 miles.
Yeah.
So he had no idea when they'd been replaced.
Yep.
So we took that list that he was going to charge us $10,000 to fix.
Which necessarily isn't a bad price, because there was so many different components and stuff. It's just $10,000 is a lot of money to just throw into something. And I could personally fix all these things. It just was a matter of understanding and doing some research on the particular car and stuff to understand it more. And then I personally did all the work with my uncle, and we saved us how much money?
So the bill that he gave us was $10,000, and when we took the list to an auto parts place, purchased all the parts, and installed them ourselves, we only ended up spending about $1,600.
Yeah. So guys, also remember that if you are working, to balance out whether if you work that time instead of fixing, are you going to make more money than you're spending? Because then it might be more valuable to you to work and make the money and spend the money on somebody else doing it. It's just all about your time and
how mechanically inclined you are, if you have the right tool to do the job. But you really have to do the engine first.
Yes, engine
because
first.
if the engine fails or falters, or you just spent $10,000 on your build, and now you're a month into your journey and your engine blows up, figuratively, whatever. You're kind of SOL, because now you've got to dump all this money into it that you might not have, and it might stop you from being able to enjoy the van life that you really want to have. Where if you say you purchased a vehicle and you took it to a dealer or a mechanic, the mechanic said your engine is a lemon, you're going to need to fix all these things, it's going to cost you X amount of dollars. Maybe you just turn around and sell that vehicle and keep looking for the vehicle that you want to build in.
Oh, for sure. And then so that also might give you an opportunity to turn around and sell the vehicle, or figure out something else you want to do with it. Maybe you purchase it for a really low price and you could scrap it and start all over.
Or even if, so for us, for example, all the vehicles inside of New York City were so expensive. Oof. We drove about 3 hours out of New York City to buy this vehicle that we ended up, it was listed for 6, we paid 4. If we had wanted to turn around and sell that in Brooklyn or Manhattan, we could have charged 8.
Yes.
Easily.
And
it would have gone. So even if you find out that your engine is you could still potentially turn a profit on the exchange. So don't be too sad if that happens. It's certainly a bummer, but it won't be the end of your van life journey.
So just to backtrack a little bit, you want to, after you buy the vehicle and you check it all out, you do all that stuff, you want to make sure the engine's good before you do any bit of your layout. You want to make sure that you're not going over your budget for whatever your budget that you set was. And then beyond that, when you're getting to your layout now, you got to make sure that your car or van or whatever it is that you're building is structurally sound and going to be able to take on whatever layout that you're going to put down in it.
When you put your whole build in, all the wood, all the plumbing, all of whatever, it's going to be really heavy.
Yes.
So one piece of wood might not be that heavy, but when you build a whole cabinet, you're adding weight, and then you move all your stuff in. So if your floor of your vehicle has a big old rust hole in it,
it's going to fall apart eventually.
It's not going to be good.
So taking care of that rust is super important, whether that's, taking a grinder and grinding down, cutting out spots where big parts of rust are, or taking a wire brush and cleaning all the rust out until you see that it's completely silver. And then you could use a couple different products to seal that metal. So you could use Rust-Oleum, you could vinyl line the car, you could do all these different things, because you have to remember, rust is like cancer. And that stuff spreads. All it takes is exposed cut metal and moisture, and then that oxidates and it becomes rust, and it will spread like weeds.
So the first thing you have to do is get rid of all of the rust.
Yeah, so
we also fiberglassed a lot of places.
Yeah. So in order to do that though, is you want to take a wire brush and you want to clean out that rust.
Did you make a video
and
about
cut
this?
out? I know, but I can. And you want to cut out the rust areas.
Yeah, where it's really bad. Like our vehicle had some spots where you could literally see through the ground, or see through our floor to the ground below. So you can't just wire brush it. You have to fill the gap.
Yeah.
So we fiberglassed a lot of areas inside of the vehicle.
And fiberglass is super strong. So
and
it's
it's
like
not very expensive
no.
either. You can get like an entire container of it for like $20.
So even if you have to put several layers of fiberglass just to strengthen that area, make sure your mixture is right, lay it down, paint it up, let it dry. It's really pretty simple. And then even after doing all that, just to make everything even more, 100%, hopefully it won't rust again. You just drop a bunch of Rust-Oleum paint down and you paint it all up, and it will look way better than before.
It's like night and day.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing that you want to look for in terms of your structure of your vehicle is leaky roofs or any kind of connection. So you want to either wait for a big rainstorm and then just kind of like sit inside the car and see what happens, or you can spray it down with a hose. But before you put any walls up, any insulation, any electrical, you have to make sure that there's no leaks.
Yeah.
Because if you have a leak and you've put all this time and money and then it all gets soaking wet and you have to rip it out, that's going to be no good.
Yeah. If you guys see me staring down at times, it's because I'm just reminiscing about those moments of when we had to make sure that all these things were happening and fixed. So even if like it's not raining outside or something like that, take a garden hose and go on the roof of the car and start spraying the whole roof of the car and have somebody else stand inside and see if anything's coming through.
Even like a teeny tiny drip, fix it.
And even if it's not, what you could do is like there's parts of the roof that have been pieced together, in the original build of the car. I would even just go over and reseal all those pieces.
Silicone.
Silicone it with some really strong silicone that you could find, and then halfway through, your year or whatever, go back up there and silicone it again just to make sure that you always have these parts sealed. That way you never have to worry about anything leaking through.
Right.
Because sun does damage, salt does damage, all these things do damage. Ice,
it just wears
snow,
away.
Things sit on top, and you have to just remember that all will wear away eventually. So always, have in mind that you will eventually need to go back up there and reseal it. Maintenance is key to keeping you from having longer and harder issues later
Down
on.
the road, yeah.
Because once you build, and close everything off, you don't want to have to take it down and go back in there.
Right.
I mean, it's so much harder to do that than to just seal it when you have the opportunity to.
And the other thing you need to think about too, we're going to get to this in a later episode about solar and fans, but you're probably going to get to places where you're actually cutting holes into the roof, into the side.
Yep.
You're going to be creating new holes. So again, when you do that, you need to make sure that everything is sealed, nothing is leaking. Before you move on to the next step, make sure 100% that you have no leaks.
Yeah, because a leak could be devastating. It could really just put a damper on everything. It could create mold. It could give you, breathing problems. It could do so many different things. So you really want to. That's one of the most important things you could do is make sure that you're sealed. And even if you're buying a vehicle that is, RV or something like that, if you have a leaky roof that you're buying one, make sure you replace the roof. You might have to replace the walls. There's a lot of stuff you might have to replace if you've had some.
One of the RVs we were actually looking at that we really loved, that we really wanted to buy, needed a whole brand new roof.
Well, and then I noticed that there was water starting to run down the walls as well.
Right.
So it would have been more than just
it becomes like a big, huge job. Like, we YouTubed how to replace a roof on an RV, and we were like, oh, we could probably do that. But I'm glad that we didn't have to.
Then after you have done all your Rust-Oleum and checked for rust and done all those things.
Let's talk for a minute about where the spare tire was on the vehicle.
Yeah,
because I don't know what year of models this was for.
I think most Sprinter vans and vans in general, Pro Masters, all these different vans, they normally have the spare tire underneath the vehicle because you want to have full access to your truck, and some people don't want a tire on their back door. It creates it to where you can't open the door fully
and it gets
things
heavy
like that. It's heavy. So the fact that it's heavy too, in our case, there must have been some type of moisture coming down the back of the truck.
Originally the tire is mounted underneath the back end of the car.
Well, yeah, so I was getting to that part.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so originally there must have been some type of water coming through the back because the seals weren't great, I guess, before this last guy bought it. And the tire is directly underneath the car, so being underneath the car,
next to the back doors.
The water was dripping down onto that back door area, and the weight of that tire, when the metal started to rust out and it wasn't strong enough to hold up anymore, the weight of that tire literally dropped the back end of the truck to where it was hanging down slightly.
Yeah, there was a solid like 3 or 4 inches between the floor and where the actual like back bumper should be connecting with the floor.
Yep, and then every time you drive, you hit bumps, so that creates this bounce,
and the
it
tire
just makes
is pulling the floor down.
It makes it more and more and more and more of a drop of a distance apart. So what we wound up doing is we actually had to cut out a whole back part of the truck, and luckily one of my friends, PJ, is an iron worker, or was an iron worker, and he could weld. So what we did is we cut out this whole back end. We put bars in there to restructure it.
We removed the tire mount.
Yeah, removed the tire mount completely, cut it out, and we decided that we were going to go with a different type of mount, a different style mount, which is on our back door. But PJ then welded these bars in, which I sort of kind of, I think, helped with the sway of the truck as well, which was fortunate that it did both. And then we put a diamond plate on top of that, which they won't rust. And then we screwed it into those new beams that he put in, and as well as the rest of the floor. And then we sealed it with this really, really high quality adhesive, and it really sealed up fully. Like, we went back the next day, and that stuff was just solid.
Yeah. So this was a huge part of our foundation issue, because in the back, at the back doors, we wanted to have a build layout. This cat is about to attack me. We wanted to have our bicycles and our bed and all of our snowboards and our water tanks right accessible at the back doors.
And if we're going to put all that weight there.
Yeah, and if the floor is saggy, if we had just gone ahead and built on it, all of our stuff in the back would be like sagging on it even more. And
for a little bit of time, it would have gave us an extra 3 inches.
But eventually, it would have caused a huge problem, and by then your floor is
Imagine
already
we're driving down the road and the whole bottom just falls right out.
Oh my god! All we have like a Flintstone car.
We have like extension cords and like stuff just falling out the bottom.
We're like, what is that noise?
Oh man, that would have been bad.
That would be bad. So, but that's why we went to all this trouble. In terms of our build, the first like month or two was literally dealing with rust, working on the engine, fixing all the structural issues. All we wanted to do was start building the actual things, but the foundation was so important that we needed to spend the time and the energy to make it right before we put any investment into actually building our home.
It's just amazing because that sets you back 2 months from your actual build.
Yeah.
So like maybe looking for something that doesn't have that, if you're not up for the task, is also a smart move. Because it was a lot of work, and luckily we had the right people in our corner to help us out in some of the situations. I don't know who you guys have out there to help you out, but it's important to have some people in your corner that could do different types of things. Otherwise, you'll be paying for that as well.
No, it's really handy. I think we skip this until next time.
Okay.
But so next week when we talk about layout, we're going to be talking about thinking it through from the beginning. So like, where are you going to need your outlets? Where is your plumbing going to go? Where are you going to have to wire your electrical? But one of the fun things that we did while we were doing this whole fixing everything, and it felt like we were never going to get to build, and it was like, it was mentally and physically exhausting because you work for so many hours and then you look and you still have a big empty truck.
Well, and one thing I just want to go back to is both of us were working 40-hour work weeks, so it wasn't like we got to spend our days working on the vehicle. Normally it was like nighttime or weekend. So like it was such a short amount of time that we got to. So it would be like you get 1, possibly 2 jobs done in a day, and then it would drag until the following week. where we could do it again, on the weekend and so on and so forth. And it was a tough task to try to handle. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
But so one of the fun things that we did while all this was going on to kind of like keep us motivated, yes, we were thinking about the design and the layout, but so what we did, we took painter's tape, we measured the width and the length of the vehicle, and we took painter's tape on the floor of our apartment and boxed out the area that the van would actually be.
Yeah, so like where we were actually going to build, so the 14 feet that we had to build in, we taped on the floor, and then we said, okay, this is going to be the wheel well, so we got to build around that. This is going to be like how the distance of the bikes would fit, and the bed and all that. So it was really cool. It was a lot of fun.
Cool, yeah.
And like we were like sitting inside of it and stuff on the floor in the middle of the house.
Yeah, we would like lay a yoga mat in the middle and think like, oh, like could we fit like cabinets on both sides and how narrow do they have to be?
Like how much room do we want to have to walk by each other and stuff like that?
And then we would tape it all out and then be like, you know what? Maybe we want to do this kind of cabinet instead of this kind of bench.
Yeah.
Rip up the tape. Do it in a different way. You could try your kitchen in the front or your kitchen in the back. Just with the tape on the floor. Those days that it was pouring rain or whatever, or like we just couldn't get outside to work. It like kind of helps keep your dream alive. Yeah. Because you can really feel like you're in the weeds.
I remember laying like in the back area, like where the bed would be, and being like, "I'm laying on our bed right now," and like it was just exciting to know that we were gonna get there eventually.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really hard to see, getting there at that point, because it was just so much work.
Yeah, but it's honestly probably some of the most important work.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if your engine fails you, you cannot travel to all the places that you want, or maybe you only saved so much money and now you have to put a third of that back into the engine after the fact. So, it can really delay or like change your travel plans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just being precise on working on the main components of the van, so underneath the hood, as well as the structure of the vehicle is the most important part before you could start building. Mm-hmm. I think that's really what this episode is mostly about, is just making sure that you are sound structurally and under the hood.
And if you want to kind of see what it looked like for us, Frankie has a really good time-lapse video of how the vehicle looked when we first started to basically when we put the floor down, which would have been basically the entire foundation build was from the start to floor. Yeah. Because all of that was the engine and the rust and the floor.
And all that stuff, and cutting even out that back area.
Yeah, in there and sealing the leaks and painting the Rust-Oleum.
One more thing too is if you guys are looking at like how to change parts or anything like that, I also have like an alternator video, how to replace the horn and things along those lines, brakes, anything you could think of. Just send me a message and I'll see if I can make a video on it and get something out there for you guys so you could better understand what you're working with.
And then maybe you could do it yourself because so I know nothing about engines and cars, and he corrects me all the time like there's no hoses inside of a diesel engine. I don't know, like it looks like a hose to me.
That was a bad example, but you know what she's saying.
Are there hoses?
Yeah, I mean there's lines that go.
What was the word that I used that you were like those don't exist?
Spark plugs, I think you said.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, so just from watching Frankie do all this mechanical work and like replacing the alternator or whatever, I was like, wow, that was actually really easy.
Yeah, it's really pretty simple, believe it or not, to do a lot of this work. The one thing that you want to make sure of is that you're doing it right and that everything is very secure at the end of it. That way nothing just goes flying off on you in the middle of the road. And disconnecting your battery before you do things that are electrical is important. And that's just removing the ground wire from your system would be enough, but disconnecting it fully is a really good idea. Mm-hmm. And that way you don't short out anything in your truck. But
the other thing to look for, especially if the previous owner of your vehicle might not have been
clean in the sense of if they're using it as a work van or whatever, they might So to just be in a rush and throw some things around, like possibly screws and
you're going to want to pull out your electrical panel.
Yeah.
So your fuse box. So inside of the Sprinter van, there's a fuse box underneath the driver's seat and also underneath the steering wheel. So you'll want to look into both of those.
Yes.
Check for any debris. We found a 2-inch nail.
Well, yeah, 2-inch nail on the video about this long.
And probably a stack of like staple gun staples.
That was probably about 1.5 inches long.
Yeah,
staples
and that metal inside of your electrical system can completely short out your whole system.
Well, not only short out your system, but burn down your whole entire vehicle.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
So while you're doing this cleanup, make sure that you check inside of your electrical components. Oh my gosh, I vacuumed so much dust and junk out of there. The cleanup of our vehicle was filthy.
It was not nice.
It was disgusting. Yeah. Like by the end of the day, we would both be like almost head to toe in like dirt and grime and muck.
You would have to like pour degreaser on yourself in the shower just to get all of it off you.
It was so bad. And looking back on it now, when I watched that video of that, I'm like, how did we even do that? That was so nasty.
But to be real with you guys, it's so amazing what you can make out of something that looks so bad.
And it's so rewarding at the end of the day.
And like even now when we come across people that see our build for the first time, their eyes almost light up when they see our vehicle, when you find people that are interested in this type of stuff. And it's so rewarding to see them light up about it, because it just makes you feel even better about what you've done and what we've created, you know. And yeah, it just feels great.
Yeah. So the foundation is really where you need to start your build, because all the fancy decor stuff, I know that it's very important, and I was definitely chomping at the bit to like get to building. But if you don't do this kind of stuff first, you will sincerely regret it down the road. So if it's taking a really long time, don't worry. We were in exactly the same boat.
Yes.
But just know that eventually you will be done scrubbing. You will be done painting rust. And you'll be done finding random screws. Actually, that's not true. So we found these random screws not that long ago. Yeah, we should have looked. We also didn't know there was a second fuse box until recently.
We installed the radio, and when we installed the radio, it didn't work. So I was like, oh, let me pull apart the electrical section just to see what's going on, and that's when we found.
Well, I actually Googled it, like, where does this radio wire to? Yeah. And it was like, check the fuse panel under the steering wheel, and I was like, there's a fuse panel under the steering wheel? What? Yeah. So, yeah, like, you'll be finding things along the way. I literally the other day found 4 or 5 disgusting melted packets of sugar.
Yeah, which was crazy because we thought we cleaned everything.
We cleaned everything like 5 times.
Yeah.
And still,
it was in like a nook somewhere.
It was like wedged between the windshield and the dashboard. I saw like this little tiny corner of a sugar packet, and I was like, where did that come from? And I take a pair of tweezers and I pull it out, and then I see there's another one in there. I'm like, what the? It was so gross.
It just makes me wonder if like we actually pulled off the whole entire front of the car. What would happen?
I don't even want to know. It would not be clean. But anyways, guys, so next week we're going to talk about the more fun bits of planning your build, which are your layout options, and how to kind of decide what's going to work best for you. But until then, we hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Experience Van Life, the podcast. Be sure to find us on Instagram. We now have an account together, so it's Frankie and Alex Vanlife, and Frankie's got fbomb_vlogs.
Yep.
And I am at the Hungry Health Coach. I know that was a lot of information all at once.
We'll put it in the link in the description below for you guys. Yeah, we'll have it in the
episode notes for sure.
Yep.
And if you have any questions, be sure to reach out to us. We're always happy to answer and give you our experience With Vanlife.
and believe me, getting information from everybody that you can lives van life is really important because it's only going to help you.
We actually reached out to a couple of like the big,
Eamon and Beck.
Yeah, we were like, what do we do about this? And everyone was always super helpful about answering the question. So
they're excited for people to come into this lifestyle too as well. You know, we're excited to see more people in this lifestyle. It's very fun. It's rewarding. I mean, it is difficult. You know, so don't think it's just peaches and cherries all the way through.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to be willing to make the sacrifices to put the time and the energy and the money into it so that you can enjoy all the benefits that go along with it.
But with all that being said, we appreciate you guys listening and hanging around with us, and we hope to see you in the next episode.
Yeah.
And we will see you guys really soon.
Catch you there. Cool.
That sounded fun.
That's good.
Thank ya.